Louisiana has a really interesting history when it comes to race. They've had a lot of problems in a large portion of their history, and that is coming to bear in a very, very interesting way that I honestly did not expect whatsoever. All right, so there's this thing that a sociologist that they bring up. It's called environmental racism. Okay, and it's a really interesting topic, and it sounds really stupid. Like what? Like what? The sun is racist now? Huh? This is the world the liberals want, you know. But environmental racism is when a certain environmental aspect is forced upon a certain group of people, usually of a certain ethnic descent, without care for their well-being, and subject them to undue issues, right? So one thing that we can talk about is I believe in Texas or Alabama, one of the two, there was a flooding that happened in a city, and the officials actually diverted a lot of the water away from a lot of the higher income areas to lower income areas that increase their flooding, and a lot of those lower income areas happen to be just majority black or predominantly black. Okay, that's just one thing. You could look at the map of pollution, and you can see that lower income usually, and those lower income areas usually are predominantly and or majority minority, and they have a much higher likelihood of having much greater pollution in their communities. Okay, now with this out of the way, let me talk to you about the activists down in Baton Rouge in Louisiana. They're called the Bucket Brigade, okay? And it's not just the BP oil spill that's been doing inordinate amounts of damage, and the lingering ghost of that environmental crisis is not only affecting them at the moment. It is also a company, okay? And several companies actually. And a lot of the legislature is bought off by a lot of these oil and gas companies and chemical companies in the state. Louisiana has an extremely high density of chemical factories in their state. It's actually incredible if you look at it. I think they rival Texas. Actually, it's incredible, right? That being said, we start our story with two activists, part of an activist group called the Bucket Brigade. And these activists, Ann Ruffles and Kate McIntosh, I think that's how you pronounce them. Ann Ruffles and Kate McIntosh, they turned themselves over to the police the other day after the police slapped them with a warrant for their arrest for terrorizing. Okay? And these two people were the head of the group called the Bucket Brigade, and the Bucket Brigade was planning something called a Nerdle Fest, okay? And it sounds all cute and funny when I actually tell you what it is. It usually people don't think it's that cute. A nerdle is a little plastic bead that lots of chemical companies use to make bags, plastic bags. They use it to make trash bags. They use it to make plastic forks and knives, things like that. And there's a lot of wasted nurdles. And now you would wonder, where do those wasted nurdles go, huh? Well, actually, they happen to end up in the Mississippi River and in the Gulf of Mexico, because they don't really care for throwing them away. They just throw them into the ocean. So it's been doing untold damages to the Louisiana, Texas, and Alabama coast, and they're just getting away with it. Okay. Now, Formosa is a very has a history in this area. Okay, in Texas, a couple of months ago, I believe they actually had a settlement. It was the biggest settlement ever in the Clean Water Act here in the United States ever. It was $50 million. They had to give $50 million because they were dumping nurdles in a certain area in Texas, and they sued. Private citizens sued, and they actually won. And that's amazing. So the Bucket Brigade in Louisiana are trying to mimic that and try to get Formosa to stop dumping in their area. All right, and a lot of this is centralized in an area called mind you, Cancer Alley. Now, why did Cancer Alley get the name Cancer Alley? Is there just a bunch of people born in what's Cancer in the zodiac sign? I'm not sure what month it is. No, it's not that. It's not as cute as that. Actually, Cancer Alley was given that name because ever since the 1960s, lots of companies have been able to dump lots of their chemicals there in the water, and lots of predominantly black communities and very poor communities along the Mississippi have been getting poisoned. And July, yeah, there, yeah, not just people born in July live there. Have been getting poisoned, and they've been having staggering numbers of cancer-related deaths in that area, far higher than the national average, and even far higher than places in Louisiana. So, Cancer Alley is the epicenter here. Okay, so protesters, what they did was these protesters collected these nurdles off the coast, and what they did is they put them in a little box. They made about 75 of these boxes, and they laid them on the desk, laid them on the front porch of oil and gas lobbyists, and I think a couple of representatives who've been pushing to allow who allow these companies to keep dumping in their area. And I want to make sure I get this right, okay? So I want to make sure I got these right. So they put them in this box, right? And then they slapped a letter onto it. And I'm trying to find the letter right now because I didn't write it down. Oh, I'm stupid. Oh, where is it? Here it is. A note was observed on the top of the package indicating not to open the container and its contents. Sorry, I should have had this up. We delivered these packages of nurdles as a reminder Louisiana does not need any more pollution, plastics or otherwise. That's what the letter said. We demand LDEQ deny Formosa's air emissions permit application. The letter was put on the top of every single box, and they took all those boxes to about 75 oil and gas 75 oil and gas lobbyists and dropped them right on their doorstep to let them know what they're actually doing to this community. Very harmless, very cool. They even let them know what was in the box to, not freak people out. But the police were actually having none of it, okay? The corrupt police department there actually has been terrorizing lots of protesters for a long time in this community. This isn't anything new, all right? Actually, back last year, I think, the legislator that was, mind you, a lot of their campaigns were paid by people like Formosa, pushed through a bill that would make it a felony to protest on oil and gas companies' property, basically banning protests near these people who are actually doing damage to these communities. Okay. And the cops have been arresting many people. They even arrested a really prominent journalist in the area and slapped them with these charges in hopefully in hopes to scare them from protesting anymore. Thankfully, the protesters in the prosecutors in the area have dropped all of the charges. They are not pursuing any of the cases. They called them bogus even, and the police were forced to let them go. All right, and what the police did after that is that they said these people are terrorizing. This is like a terrorist attack, and they charged these two protesters. I'm getting to that right now. They charged these two protesters with terrorizing because on the box it said that the materials were hazardous. Now what the letter actually said was, do not leave this next to pets and do not leave it in the reach of children. Okay, something that you get on the bottle of just like a bottle of alcohol. Okay, something that you get in a bottle of freaking condoms. All right, nothing crazy. Now they wanted to run with this and say that They said that it was hazardous material, like I don't know, flaming dog turds or something that they left on their table. Maybe like a swine flu infested pig head. I don't know. This is not true. Nowhere on the note did it say it was hazardous material. They said don't leave it next to kids and don't leave it next to pets because they'll eat it and die, just like the wildlife down in Louisiana are doing literally as we speak. Okay? They took them in for this. They filed a warrant for them. They filed a warrant for this on the same day, and they called up these activist lawyers, right? And these activists have to carry around lawyers in their back pocket because the police are always on their case no matter what they're doing. The other day on Juneteenth, actually, and if you didn't know, Juneteenth is an actual holiday celebrating the last slaves in the country being freed from their bondage. Okay, these activist leaders were on their way to a slave burial site when their lawyer called them and said that the police chief called him and said that a warrant is out for both of their arrests. And actually, it gets even worse. This burial site, actually, the slave burial site, is actually a place that Formosa wants to desecrate, dig up, and drop a new factory on. And they actually were in court the other day, trying to stop the protesters from gathering to honor the dead at this burial site. And they recently lost in court. And on the same day that they lost in court, the police filed this warrant. They've been sitting on this warrant for a couple of weeks now. They did not go through with it, but as soon as they lost that court case, the police rung up those people's their lawyers and said, "Hey, your boys are gonna have to come in." Could be a coincidence, but honestly, I feel like it's probably not. Okay. The police have been so bad they actually tried to get one of the protesters, which is a legally blind priest. They tried to get him on inciting a riot. Actually, when he was just protesting that Formosa needs to stop dumping chemicals in the water that are definitely doing far more harm than turning the friggin' frogs gay. Okay. They tried to get him on inciting a riot. The prosecutors dropped that case as well. Thankfully, this guy is safe. But he has to keep around lawyers as well to make sure that he stays safe. Okay? That on top of the environmental racism that plays on top of this place is one of the worst, if not the worst, county in the country when it comes to coronavirus death rates, because there are so many pre-existing conditions. There are so many people who have so many underlying problems because of the chemicals that are being dumped in their air and water that they are dying at an alarming rate. And this is where our story basically ends at the moment. These people are posted bail. They are out. They're awaiting their charges to be either picked up by prosecutors or left alone. As we are kind of thinking that is most likely happening, is most likely going to happen. But this organized coordination between the police department and the police department, their elected officials, their legislators, and these oil and gas companies in Louisiana churns out so many issues for the most vulnerable people in that state, the most at-risk people in that state, and are leading to actual deaths in staggering numbers. It should be a civil case. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to push a civil case like they were able to do in Texas. But right now they're fighting this legal issue, trying to make sure that they're not going to get slapped with maximum 15 years in jail and or a $15,000 fine. We're hoping that the prosecutors won't pick it up like they did with the last case. It seems like these cases, like the other cases that the police tried to bring up against these people, are meritless and fallacious. But in times like these, we're not exactly sure what's going to happen. So I'll say, if you want to get into what they're doing, if you feel angered by this, like I did, Check them out. They're called Bucket Brigade in Louisiana. They're doing great work for the people there, in a place that's literally called Cancer Valley. Okay. This is really important. And this kind of highlights the real issues that we have in this country.